Do questions come into play at all, or is it more one way, or does it get dynamic in the discussion of stories?
Well, so the story itself is one way. Once you've started telling a story, it's typically I'm going to talk for the next 2 minutes and tell you a story, and then you're going to respond and tell me what you learned from the story, right? Because I'm telling you the story to teach you some kind of a lesson, and I need to check and make sure that you learned the right lesson, so that I don't have to tell you what the lesson is. Because if I'm just going to tell you what the lesson is, I don't need to tell you the story. I should just tell you what to do, right? Um, so there is questioning before you tell the story. So you need to find out, you need to ask enough questions so you know what story you need to tell, right? And then after you've told the story, you need to ask them, well, what did you learn from the story? What do you think you'll go do now? So you're asking to see what they learned, if they learned the right lesson. But during the 2 minutes, it's your turn to talk. And there, by the way, there are questions that you need to ask, that you can ask to get your audience to tell you a story, as opposed to give you short answer questions. And so it's important to learn the right questions to ask to elicit stories from people, not just to tell them.
What would that look like, if you don't mind sharing a little bit
Yeah.
more about eliciting a story from an employee, or maybe even a customer? I'm not sure.
Yeah. So if you had a customer that you wanted to find out, what their biggest problem is right now, so that you can help them solve it with, whatever it is that you sell, you could ask them a closed-ended question like, what's your biggest problem right now? Yeah, and they would answer it in just one or two words. They might say, "Oh, warehousing. Warehousing is our biggest problem." Okay, well, can you fix that? I don't know. How do you know? Like, you don't know much about the problem. But if you ask the question this way, tell me about the moment you realized your biggest problem was your biggest problem. Oh, well, that would have been last. Biggest customer called in a last minute order, a huge order, and we went out to the warehouse and we couldn't find the product they were after, so we had to schedule a special production run. We made all of it just in time. We expedited the shipment to the customer at a huge upcharge, and we got it there just in time. And then we went out to the warehouse and found the product that they were looking for right where it should have been all along. Like, okay, now you know what they mean by a warehousing problem. It's an inventory location problem, right? So asking questions that elicits stories is far better for you, because you'll learn more. You'll have more insight into the real problem than just saying, "Oh, warehousing is our biggest problem," or "Inventory is our biggest problem," or even "Inventory management's our biggest problem." Well, what does that really mean? Like, give me an example of that being a problem, right? So those are the kind of questions you want to ask.
So getting them to walk through also helps them to reconnect to the pain that they're having and the
Ooh,
problem they're facing, which allows you to then have more impetus to actually work with you, if you, assuming you can, of course, solve the problem.
yeah, yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that, but you've just had them. What was the word you used?
Pain building.
They've re-experienced, essentially. They're
Yes.
re-experiencing the pain point by talking through it. So yeah, they're a little bit more primed to want your solution.